The Maimonides project, involving hundreds of subjects and thousands of hours of observation with expensive equipment, was so costly it will never be repeated. It doesn't need to be, because researchers have found simpler ways of exploring the potential of altered states of consciousness. At the Rhine Research Center in North Carolina, parapsychologists are experimenting with a new technique. It involves nothing more complex than shielding subjects from distracting influences. It is known as the Ganzfeld, or uniform field, and is proving to be a very effective way of encouraging spontaneous experiences.
And then I'll place these goggles.
Dr. Cheryl Alexander uses it to help her subjects relax in experiments designed to detect potential psychic ability. The receiver sits in a reclining chair in dim red light, her eyes covered, wearing headphones that play unpatterned, uniform white noise. The combined effect of this mild form of sensory deprivation allows her to tune out her immediate surroundings and to pay attention instead to fainter signals.
The theory behind it is that when subjects are in this altered state of consciousness, the external noises from the environment are reduced, so they have an internal awareness state, and that state will allow them to gain access to any type of psychic information that may be present.
At the opposite end of the building, a sender is set up. She's equipped with headphones, a sketch pad, and a television monitor. And her task is to try to reach out, establish a connection, and send specific information to a receiver she may or may not know. When both sender and receiver are ready and relaxed, the session begins. The sender selects an image at random, choosing from a pool of 106 photographs and film clips, each with some special quality. These are presented to her on the television monitor in various ways, as still or moving pictures, in black and white or color, at length or in short bursts.
They're the only ones who know what the target picture is, and their task is to concentrate on that information and to try to send it via mental thought, mental telepathy, to the receiver. And to help them do that, they have a pad of paper and they sketch parts of the picture and write about what it is that they're seeing, and they try to send that information to the receiver.
In the other room, the receiver tries to pick up information and talks about whatever enters her mind.
Landscape, more like landscape garden.
A one-way audio link allows the sender to hear this output, providing feedback that may help her to transmit more effectively.
Branch, and that was it. Like a long flowing dress. Like little children, just kind of jumping and bouncing around. It's like a dog's face, and like he was barking in anger.
In a total of nearly 3,000 such tests done in a dozen different laboratories all over the world, the overall success rate was more than 33%. The odds against this happening purely by chance are about 1 trillion to 1. But some subjects regularly score far above this level. Dr. Alexander's most remarkable receiver is Sean Haribants from Trinidad. He has been tested at the Rhine Center for many years, providing material for over 30 papers published in scientific journals. In one early study, under strictly controlled conditions, he scored 72 correct predictions in just 93 trials. A result in that case represents 1 chance in 40 million. Sean was the first person to produce consistently high scores in traditional ESP tests. And it was discovered that while doing this, he was generating sustained alpha activity in his brain. This is a frequency more often associated with deep relaxation and meditation. And now Dr. Alexander has been able to pinpoint the precise area of his brain which is involved in such apparently psychic ability.
This is a topographic picture of Sean's brain, and this white spot right here shows you that while he was participating in a psi task, He had a predominance of alpha activity that is associated with restfulness, and it's dominant in the right side of his brain, in the parietal region.
Dr. Alexander believes that if a particular area of the brain, which is normally at rest, is stimulated by psychic ability, then this shows that something definite and biological is happening. But she does not believe that Sean is the only one involved.
I think that people do have these flashes of intuition. It may not occur on a regular basis. It may be something that happens once in a person's lifetime. But I think we all have the ability to have that sort of thing occur.
It is becoming clear that our brain is not just a biological computer. It seems to have the ability to make intuitive leaps, to pick up information in unusual ways, and to reach conclusions that don't depend only on normal programming. Is it possible that we could all be psychic without knowing? Until humans are cloned, no people on Earth are going to be closer to each other than identical twins. They look alike, sound alike, suffer from the same physical problems, and because they share the same DNA, seem almost to inhabit each other's skins. So it's not surprising that they should also experience strange coincidences, and find that at times they are in mental touch with one another in ways that appear to be telepathic. Close contact and shared lives are bound to encourage coincidence, making it difficult to decide whether twins are linked by genetic inheritance or by their common experience. But there are a small number of natural experiments which can help to resolve this problem. Barbara and Daphne are one of only 68 known pairs of identical twins to have been separated at birth and grown up apart. Neither of them knew of the existence of the other until Barbara discovered that she had been adopted and tried to find her natural parents. She learned that her mother had been a Finnish au pair who gave birth to twins at Hammersmith Hospital in London in 1939.
She was admitted to Duquesne Road Hospital, Hammersmith Hospital, and therefore she gave birth to twins. Then it was wartime, the war broke out, and the parents wanted her back in Finland.
She gave up the twins for adoption by different parents in England, and then moved on to Germany, where she married. A year later, deeply unhappy in this situation, she committed suicide.
And then I felt, well, that story can't end there. Somehow, I don't know why. So I wrote to Hammersmith Hospital, who put me forward to social services, and confirmed, yes, there was a birth 12 minutes prior to mine.
Finding her twin took years, including a court injunction to learn Daphne's married name. But when the two finally met at the age of 40, neither of the twins felt like strangers.
Would you know, to me, it was just like meeting a friend that I hadn't seen for a long time.
And that's just what it felt like for us.
Yeah, so it didn't seem strange that this was a stranger that I'm meeting. It was just like a relative I either hadn't seen for a long, long time, and I was pleased to meet them, and fine.
We didn't even introduce our husbands to each other, did we? We just thought that they know each other, they know each other.
So we walked off the platform, left them behind.
Despite being kept apart for so long, the twins' lives were remarkably alike. They married men with the same first names. They have mother-in-laws who share the same names and birthdays. They own the same clothes in the same colours, bought from the same stores in different towns. They both repainted their corridors in the same odd shade of gold in the same month, and each miscarried a child within days of the other. Such coincidences between strangers turned the twins into a fascinating natural laboratory. It was not long before news of their reunion reached scientists working on the Twins Project at the University of Minnesota. In America, Barbara and Daphne were given 20,000 tests designed to throw light on the inheritance of human behavior.
We even did write the same thing in one of the tests.
It's silly writing, wasn't it? It was a short sentence. And we can't spell cat, can we?
Well, you go in and this psychologist or whatever it is, it says, sit down, you sit down. Would you write a sentence? Well, I was waiting for him to tell me what sentence to write. So he said, no, quickly, just write a sentence. So I quickly put the cat on the mat. But I misspelt cat. My brain must have been working funny because I put the CAS, the CAS sat on the mat. And then the next day,
I did exactly the same. The same sentence. And I can't spell cat either. Mine came out CAS.
In spite of 40 years of separation, the twins appear to be linked at an unconscious level, even if they don't think of themselves as telepathic.
I mean, say sometimes we look at each other and we seem to sense what the other one's going to say or do, but I wouldn't say it's
Telepathic, no. I never had tests on
No,
telepathy.
It seems unlikely that the unusual connections between Barbara and Daphne are the result of genetics alone. But it would be interesting to know if such linkages can be forged between people who share no genes at all. At the Churchill Clinic in London, research is underway to show that some unconscious connections do exist. That emotional bonds do build up between people who are genetic strangers, that these bonds can allow them to share information in unusual ways. Folklore suggests that long-lasting couples do grow to look and sound alike. Are such resemblances more than skin deep? Could their brains begin to work in the same way?
This is an experiment to see if we can get a transference of your brain activity from one person to the other. There will be a knock.
Clinical psychologist Dr. Peter Fenwick suspects that like minds may forge a sort of telepathic contact.
And then plug yourselves in and just listen to the beeps. The experiment sets out to answer the question, are people in some way coupled to each other? If you get a loving couple, or people who know each other very well and like their partner, then you can get a transfer of brain activity from one to the other.
During this experiment, the couple's brainwaves are monitored. They also wear headphones over which a special tone is played at random intervals. Only one of them hears the tone. The other does not. The question is, when one person hears the tone, does the other register this awareness in any way? If they do, then there would appear to be an unexplained connection between the two individuals. Dr. Fenwick has found that in some circumstances, there is such transference. People who are genetically unrelated, but emotionally close, do sometimes seem to be unconsciously aware of what is happening to the other.
Here you can see, again, we have the two subjects. This is the subject who is not being stimulated, and this is the subject who is being stimulated. And you can see the evoked response here, and it's very clear. Now, these two subjects are in empathic relationship with each other. And if you look at this, you can see at the time the stimulus comes, you get a marked change in the brain rhythms of the other person.
So something, it seems, may extend beyond the brain and make some sort of telepathic contact. Both in couples who just happen to be emotionally involved, and in twins who we know are also genetically linked. But does connection necessarily end there? What about contact between total strangers? Almost everyone at some time has had the feeling of being stared at from behind. Sometimes because there really is someone there, doing just that. It also seems possible, just by staring intently at the back of someone's head, to make them uncomfortable enough to turn around. Skeptics dismiss such claims as groundless superstition. But the idea is so widespread and so persistent that two psychologists have recently set out to investigate it for themselves.
Around about 90% of the population experience the staring phenomena in everyday life. So they will have that feeling of being stared at. It's a very common sensation. And so when we bring people into the lab and we say the experiment is about this feeling of being stared at, it makes sense to them. Instantly they go, oh, I've experienced that. It's really interesting to see whether it's going to work under these conditions.
The question is this due to some kind of heightened peripheral vision that we're not consciously aware of? Or is there some kind of non-sensory exchange of information that's occurring between the two people?
Okay, these two sensors will measure how stressed or relaxed you are, and they need to go into your first...
So Dr. Wiseman, the skeptic who thought there was nothing in it, and Dr. Schlitz, who believed the phenomenon might be a form of psychic ability, converged on it in search of the truth.
Absolutely fine. Okay, I don't want you to try and guess when you're being stared at. Just relax. If occasionally you want to look up at the camera, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll see you in about 15 minutes. Okay, thanks.
In this investigation into the sense of being stared at, each subject is wired up to equipment that records their physiological responses. They are encouraged to relax, and to ensure that their response is not cued by sound, smell, or peripheral vision, the starers look in from another room, through the eye of a closed-circuit television camera. Everything is arranged so that at random intervals and for varying periods of time, the experimenter can give instructions for staring to begin and end.
At the end of the experiment, you then look at the person's physiology and say, well, were they more stressed or more relaxed when they were being stared at than when they weren't? And if that's the case, it suggests there's something unusual, perhaps psychic going on. If not, then you can say, okay, there would seem to be no link between the stare and what the person's physiology was doing.
The physiological signs in which both Wiseman and Schlitz are most interested are autonomic. They are not under conscious control. If these change while people are being stared at, this suggests their bodies are somehow aware of the scrutiny.
What we're looking at is the claim that people make that, for example, they get little tingles up the back of their neck when somebody's staring at them and that makes them look up. Well, this is the kind of thing that represents an autonomic response.
The two psychologists made independent investigations and came up with different results. In her study, Marilyn Schlitz found the subjects were, both consciously and unconsciously, aware of being stared at. Richard Wiseman, on the other hand, got completely negative results.
We carried out 4 studies of our own here and found absolutely no effect at all. All our results were at chance.